They say family comes first, but sometimes family comes to destroy you. I'm Margaret, born in 1952 in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Back in 2019, when I was 67, my son David gave me an ultimatum that shattered everything I believed about motherhood. I felt like my world was crumbling, but then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 72, sitting in my beautiful apartment overlooking the mountains, I'm finally sharing this because every woman deserves to know her worth. The Thanksgiving table stretched before me like a battlefield, perfectly set with my grandmother's china and the crystal glasses Robert and I had received as wedding gifts 43 years ago. The turkey was golden, the stuffing fragrant with sage, and the cranberry sauce gleamed like rubies in cut glass bowls. Everything was perfect except for the empty chair where Robert should have been sitting. Cancer had taken him 8 months earlier, leaving me rattling around in our 4-bedroom colonial like a ghost haunting her own life. I smoothed my navy dress, the one Robert always said brought out my eyes, and checked the clock for the 100th time. David and his pregnant wife Sarah were already 20 minutes late, but I'd learned not to call. Sarah didn't appreciate what she called my hovering, though I'd raised 3 children and managed a household for decades without anyone's guidance. When they finally arrived, David barely hugged me before Sarah waddled past, her hand protectively cradling her 7-month belly. She surveyed my dining room with the critical eye of someone already planning renovations. "Oh, Margaret," she sighed. "This is all so much. Don't you think it's time to simplify?" I forced a smile and served the meal I'd spent 2 days preparing. David ate mechanically while Sarah picked at her food, making comments about sodium content and processed ingredients. The conversation felt stilted, punctuated by long silences where Robert's laughter should have filled the gaps. "Mom," David finally said, setting down his fork with deliberate precision, "Sarah and I have been talking. With the baby coming, we're going to need more space." My heart began to race, though I kept my expression neutral. "Of course, dear. Have you found a larger apartment?" Sarah and David exchanged a look, one of those married couple communications that excluded everyone else in the room. "Actually," Sarah said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to dread, "we were thinking this house would be perfect for us. It's already baby-proofed from when David was little, and the neighborhood is so established." I felt the blood drain from my face. "This is my home." "Well, yes," David said quickly, "but it's really too big for just you, don't you think? All these stairs, the maintenance, the property taxes. It's not practical." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with false concern. "We've researched some lovely retirement communities. Sunset Manor has activities and meal plans, and you wouldn't have to worry about anything. Or," she paused dramatically, "if you'd prefer to stay here, you could help with the baby. Like a live-in grandmother." The words hit me like physical blows. I stared at my son, the boy I'd rocked through countless nights, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college tuition I'd helped pay even when money was tight. "You want me to either leave my home or become your unpaid nanny?" "It's not like that, Mom," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's about what makes sense for everyone." "What makes sense," I repeated slowly, "is that this is the house your father and I bought in 1981. Where we raised you and your sisters. Where every room holds 40 years of memories." Sarah's mask slipped slightly. "Memories don't pay property taxes, Margaret. And frankly, some of this old furniture is just taking up space. We'd need to modernize everything anyway." I looked around the room, at Robert's reading chair by the window, at the piano where David had practiced scales for 6 reluctant years, at the built-in bookshelf Robert had installed himself, complete with the slight imperfection that made it uniquely ours. Sarah was already mentally erasing us. "I need time to think," I said quietly. "Of course," David said, relief flooding his voice. "Take all the time you need." But the baby's due in February, so. After they left, I sat in Robert's chair and cried until I had no tears left. Then I walked through each room, touching surfaces and remembering. In our bedroom, I found the letter Robert had written me during his final hospital stay. Maggie, my darling, don't let anyone make you smaller than you are. You're stronger than you know. That night I couldn't sleep. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped David with homework, where we'd planned our dreams and weathered our storms. The house felt different now, not like a sanctuary, but like a prison where I was serving a sentence for the crime of growing old. At dawn, I drove to Murphy's Diner downtown, needing to be around people who didn't see me as an inconvenience. The waitress, a kind woman named Betty, brought me coffee without being asked. You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, honey. I found myself telling her everything. Betty listened without judgment, occasionally refilling my cup. When I finished, she pointed to a bulletin board near the register. Might be something there for you. Among the usual notices for lost cats and garage sales, one flyer caught my eye. Mountain View Retirement Community Winter Art Residency Program. Rediscover your passion in our state-of-the-art studios. Independent living with optional services. Call today. Something stirred in my chest, not resignation but possibility. I'd majored in art before marriage and children redirected my path. What if leaving wasn't surrender but liberation? I drove straight from Murphy's Diner to Mountain View Retirement Community, the flyer clutched in my trembling hand. The facility sat on a hillside overlooking the valley, its modern architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Nothing like the sterile nursing home Sarah had probably envisioned for me. The tour guide, a vibrant woman named Linda who couldn't have been much younger than me, showed me spacious apartments with full kitchens and private balconies. We're not a nursing home, she explained, sensing my hesitation. We're a community for active adults who want independence with optional support. Many of our residents are artists, retired professionals, people starting new chapters. The art studio took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, professional easels, and natural light that would make any painter weep with joy. The winter residency is perfect timing, Linda said. You'd have 3 months to create a portfolio, with the option to stay permanently if you love it here. That afternoon I called my attorney, James Morrison, who'd handled Robert's estate. James, I need to discuss transferring property ownership. Margaret, are you sure about this? It's a significant decision. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of secret preparations. I opened a new bank account, transferred my personal savings, and arranged for the art residency. Every morning, I watched Sarah arrive with measuring tape and paint samples, treating my home like her personal renovation project. She'd moved my wedding photos to make room for her ultrasound pictures and suggested I declutter Robert's books because the baby will need space for toys. David seemed oblivious to his wife's territorial behavior, or perhaps he simply chose not to see it. When I mentioned feeling displaced, he patted my shoulder dismissively. Mom, you're being dramatic. Sarah's just nesting. It's natural for pregnant women. But there was nothing natural about the way Sarah sorted through my kitchen, boxing up my good china for safekeeping, and replacing my coffee maker with some complicated machine that required special pods. She'd even rearranged my spice rack, claiming my system was inefficient. The breaking point came when I found her in Robert's study, packing his books into donation boxes. These old medical journals are just collecting dust, she said without looking up. And honestly, Margaret, this room would make a perfect nursery. The morning light is ideal. I stood in the doorway, watching her erase my husband's presence with casual efficiency. Robert's diplomas lay stacked carelessly on the desk, and his favorite fountain pen, the one I'd given him for our 20th anniversary, was nowhere to be seen. "Where's his pen?" I asked quietly. "What pen?" Sarah didn't pause in her packing. "The Mont Blanc. Gold with his initials." She shrugged. "Probably in one of these boxes. Don't worry, I'll make sure it gets to Goodwill with everything else." That night, I finalized my plans. James had prepared all the documents, and Mountain View had confirmed my move-in date for the following Monday, exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent the weekend quietly packing a single suitcase with my most precious belongings. Robert's pen, which I'd found in Sarah's donation box, my grandmother's jewelry, photo albums, and my old art supplies. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, the accumulated possessions of a lifetime, would stay with the house. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully in my best wool coat and the pearl earrings Robert had given me for our silver anniversary. At exactly 9 o'clock, I placed an envelope on the kitchen table and walked out the front door for the last time. The envelope contained 3 documents. A deed transfer making David the legal owner of the house, effective immediately. A letter from Mountain View confirming my acceptance into their community. And notices that I'd closed all joint accounts and credit cards, leaving David responsible for all household expenses going forward. My letter was brief. "David, you said I could serve your family or leave. I choose to leave. The house is yours now, along with all the responsibilities that come with it. I've found a place where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can provide. I hope someday you'll understand that a home isn't just walls and furniture. It's the love that fills it. I'll always love you, but I won't sacrifice my dignity for your convenience. Mom." I drove to Mountain View with my heart pounding but my hands steady. Linda met me at the entrance with a warm smile and a set of keys. "Welcome home, Margaret." My apartment was small but perfect. A living room with a view of the mountains, a compact kitchen, and a bedroom that felt like a sanctuary rather than a museum of memories I was no longer allowed to touch. For the first time in months, I could breathe. That evening, I joined other residents for dinner in the community dining room. The conversation flowed easily, discussions of books, travel, grandchildren, and dreams deferred but not abandoned. Nobody treated me like a burden or an inconvenience. I was simply Margaret, a woman starting a new adventure. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from David, but I let them go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear his anger or Sarah's indignation. This wasn't about punishment. It was about reclaiming my life. 3 days later, I received a text from David. "Mom, we need to talk. The mortgage payment is due, and the utilities are in your name. Sarah's crying because she thought the house was paid off." I smiled as I typed back. "The house has a 30-year mortgage with 22 years remaining. The monthly payment is $2,847. All utilities and property taxes are now your responsibility. Welcome to homeownership." The art studio became my refuge. I started with simple sketches, the view from my window, the faces of new friends, the orchid on my nightstand that bloomed more beautifully than any flower in my old garden. My hands remembered skills I'd thought were lost forever. 6 weeks later, a letter arrived from David. His handwriting was shaky, uncertain. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what we were asking of you. Sarah and I are struggling with the house payments, and she's realized how much work you did that we took for granted. We miss you. Could we visit?" I set the letter aside and returned to my easel. Forgiveness would come, but on my terms, in my time. I'd spent 67 years putting everyone else's needs before my own. Now, finally, I was learning to put myself first. If you're watching this and feeling trapped by family expectations, remember, you have choices, even when it doesn't feel like it. Like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more tales of late life liberation. And share this with anyone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your power. Comment below and tell me about a time you chose yourself over others' expectations.
Moral lesson.
Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching others to value what they've taken for granted. And the most profound strength lies in walking away with grace.